All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. So, hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Walker, and I'm the founder and CEO of Sherpa. I want to welcome you to our conversation today. We appreciate being able to have you spend some time with us. As we shared, our goal today is to talk about the gap between when you generate the click to actually getting to the conversion. I have with me some partners along the way that are going to share some of their experiences. First to start is our partner with Armada Marketing and Jennifer. And then myself, I'll share a little bit of the work that we've done to help practices with this critical click-to-conversion opportunity. And then ultimately, Andy Manos has joined us from Northstar Interventional Radiology to share a little bit about how that has worked for them as they've transformed their click-to-conversion opportunity. Showing for you.
Very good. It's so great to see so many people and some familiar names in here. We appreciate you all attending. I'm Jennifer Crump-Bertram. I've been with Armada Medical Marketing 23 years now. Essentially, we are an integrated marketing agency that is really fulfilling the role as a marketing department for most of the practices we work with, or we integrate where there is an existing marketing department. And so the idea is that we have basically generated a variety of service offerings that really complement everything and anything you might need as it relates to earning new patients. I'm going to specifically focus today on some of the infrastructural information, some of the variety of marketing you might be able to do before passing it off to my colleagues here. I do want to just start with saying, essentially, this is looking to directly market to patients. There's a whole other component to that, and that is marketing to physicians. But because this is very specific to lead conversion as it relates to patients, particularly for self-pay, or I shouldn't say self-pay, but elective services generally, I want to focus there. So keep that in mind. We'll start off with basically that. How do you advertise directly to potential patients? I should start by saying that really all advertising media works. It can, but not all advertising is necessarily appropriate for your particular practice. And that's something that we need to determine which are the best vehicles for marketing for your particular practice to earn the most number of patients that are qualified. Our goal is a direct response advertising approach. We are not talking about a branding approach in this case. The reason for it is branding is wonderful and has its place, but I'm interested in obtaining leads for you by medium and tracking the ROI for it so that we can better refine where your budget is going. So that's where we're going to focus, is that direct response advertising that gets people to call or respond in some way to your marketing. And ultimately, our goal is to make sure that your advertising achieves the lowest cost per qualified lead. Moving on, we'll explain how patients are exercising more and more choice than they have ever before. Consider that out-of-pocket payments for insured patients rose 68% in 5 years. They have an increased expectation for the quality of care that they receive. So we're really needing to up our game here. As it relates to technology and access to information like reviews, 80% of adults research health information online, and 44% use the internet to find a medical provider. Patients are selecting their own provider used to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 24%. It's now closer to 60%, and with higher margins for practices like ortho practices, ortho surgery, it's more like 80%. What you have to understand about this is that patients are exercising choice, and they're doing so on the internet. You must have a proactive approach to your marketing in order to attract these patients. I'm going to lay what I would say is the infrastructure for marketing out for you. For you to have a presence online, it needs to be professional, it needs to be integrated, cohesive, and strong. The way to do that is first to build a dedicated website for your practice's service line. So I'll say that we're speaking to a breadth of various fields here, mostly medical, I would say. But what we would need to know about that is that there are nuances, right? And so we work with a lot of diagnostic practices who have ventured off into the interventional radiology space. And so for that, I would say in some instances, it makes sense for some service lines to have its own separate website in many cases, maybe even its own brand. But for those of you that doesn't make sense, you can certainly integrate a service line into your website as well, particularly if you're deciding to offer something new, or if it's just your core competencies, that this would apply as well. So a dedicated website for the service line if possible, but integrated if not. More than a half of your potential patients will evaluate your website before scheduling an appointment. A healthy foundation is critical. Consider a great platform like WordPress or something else like it that's very user-friendly in its programming. It's also responsive, so it has to work well on a desktop and all the way to something small like a mobile device. Each service line should have its own dedicated landing page. And the reason for it is that you want each landing page to have keyword-rich words built into it. Include things like symptoms people may be experiencing. Build out each service page with the content to address questions that they have. Have a really robust, frequently asked questions section potentially. And then also, just a side note, make sure that your websites are ADA compliant so there's no legal action taken later. This is an important piece in the particularly the medical website realm. The second component of laying a really solid foundation for your marketing infrastructure is search engine optimization. Your objective is to rank as highly as possible on search engines. Let's use Google as an example since it's such a powerhouse. Google uses quality and relevance of your content on your site in order to rank you more highly in the search results page. So what is called SERP, search engine results page, is demonstrated by this screenshot on this particular slide. Essentially what it's suggesting is if I am asking a question, say, what are uterine fibroids? It's going to generate a bunch of different links for you, but it's also going to generate a little section of people also ask. This is a great tool. I use it all the time. It oftentimes is extremely relevant to the question I'm asking. And the idea is that you write content that answers the question people are answering. How do you know what people are asking? There are great free resources available to you, including things like SEMrush and a company called Answer the Public. You can do great free research. You can even upgrade to paid research if you prefer. But the idea is that use your tools available to you to understand what people are asking about the product or service line that you're offering. And then answer those questions on your website in a really text content rich way. And then ultimately, always consider the end user experience. Make navigating your site super simple. Incorporate video that's highly consumable. Consider that the site speed is really, really low. How many times have you hit a website and it takes a while, it's sort of spinning and you bounce right off of it? You're just not interested. People are very quick to react to that sort of thing. So make sure your site speed is very high. Also, can't emphasize this enough. Reliable reciprocal links are really critical. That is what I mean to say by that is websites that are reliable, linking back to your website. You can achieve this in a variety of ways. A few examples might include releasing a press release on the wire, having social media channels that link back to your site, and also being a part of professional organizations that link back to your site is a really great way to maximize those reciprocal links. Also directories, those are huge. You must be on Google My Business, and it's a great way to not only claim your presence in that particular social media, but also to make sure that your information is accurate, because how many times has a business been listed in some directory that they've just pulled information off the internet as opposed to actually getting it from the source, and it's incorrect. The addresses are wrong, and it's actually the main headquarters as opposed to the location patients would visit, or the phone numbers or whatnot are outdated. So claim those properties as your own. Make sure that you have your profiles set up. Health Grades, ZocDoc, Doximity are also great opportunities for claiming as well. Social media like Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Doximity, TikTok, Google My Business, Apple Connect. Those are just the basics. I would absolutely claim those. In our experience, being a part of various social media like those has generated organically 10 to 40% of site traffic. But when you use paid social media, that has gone upwards of 78% of the web traffic that we achieve for clients. So really, really important to be a part of those social media. Also, I would argue you've already created an enormous amount of content on your website, or you should have. Let's use that information in another way, maximize that investment, and use those as posts on your various social media as well to drive people back to your website. And finally, I'll say reputation management is really, really important. 3 out of 4 people use the internet to find information about a doctor or medical practice. Even with a referral, 92% of patients reported they always or sometimes conduct their own research online to validate their doctor's recommendation. Your practice's online presence is critical. You can use it to improve your visibility, your accessibility, your overall appeal, and with your reputation with the right approach. Now let's go on to a few of the options for patient marketing. One of my absolute favorite, well, I should say when you need to market direct to patients, especially at the beginning of building a practice or a service line, because building your referral base among potentially referring providers takes a great deal of time. Cultivating those relationships are laborious. And in the interim, you can sort of build into your schedule those patients much quicker by going directly to them via these digital methods. I would say using a digital marketing campaign, in my opinion, is the best first line approach. And the reason for it is that it's trackable. I can prove to you that it's working, and I can give you an actual ROI to evaluate later. So search engine marketing, SEM, is something like pay-per-click. You may know it as Google AdWords. It's simply when you search a word in a search engine and it populates a variety of results. I would only consider this opportunity if you are willing to pursue it a minimum of 3 months. And the reason for that is that there's an algorithm that's part of the Google, wheel, if you will, that really gets churning, and you don't really understand what results you might achieve until you've hit the 90-day mark. So I would say that first, preemptively. I would say that what's wonderful about search engine marketing is that it's highly targeted. There's very little waste. And the other wonderful component of this is that the people that are searching are likely candidates because they're interested in the product that you offer, right? There are drawbacks. There are many competitors in the space. They drive up the cost of marketing. But if you're not present, your competitor gets the lead. So what I would suggest in this case is, again, reiterating the use of keywords, rich content in your website that people are actually searching. Symptoms, procedure names. Consider this. 6% of people search by treatment or procedure. Let's say UFE, kyphoplasty, those sorts of words. But 38% are searching by symptoms. Leg pain while walking. You might want to appear for that if you're marketing a, peripheral artery disease solution. 37% of them are actually searching by condition or disease, like uterine fibroids. What I would suggest as part of a marketing campaign that's digital on a search engine marketing campaign would be an extremely strong call to action. It needs to be the first thing they see, and it needs to be strong. I would absolutely include a click to call where it's at one press of a button, they can call your practice. I would highly advise some sort of call rail or recording that's HIPAA compliant so that you can evaluate calls. And I would also offer a form fill option because not always is it during business hours, and nor are some people comfortable calling or in a place where they can call. So give them options, but make sure it's HIPAA compliant as well. So those forms come through sensitively. Social media advertising is another opportunity. It's inexpensive. It creates immediate results. It's flexible, so you can turn it on and off to evaluate. But I have to say that these leads have a more passive interest. They weren't necessarily looking for you at all. They just happened to see you pop up when they were scrolling. So they may not be ready to commit, and they are much, much more difficult to convert to the actual quality leads. Another method would be location-based advertising. You may have heard of it referred to as geofencing. It's basically just targeting a mobile device within a geographic area via mobile apps. Viewers click through to a custom landing page with the content you've set up so that they can learn more. Consider this. Maybe I want to reach women who are turning 40 as it relates to their mammograms, right? We want to make sure these women are getting in, and this is the time for it. We might target OBGYNs and fertility offices if we're marketing something like uterine fibroid embolization. We might target oncology offices if we want to reach people with a Y90 product. Or we might actually market to geofence golf courses and urology offices if we're interested in reaching men who are struggling and need something like prostate artery embolization. Finally, traditional advertising absolutely has its place. It's an excellent resource to people. This includes things like broadcast TV, radio, outdoor billboards, that sort of thing. What you need to understand about that is that it is highly fractionalized. You're reaching everyone who might be watching or see it or hear it, not just your target market. And costs haven't necessarily adjusted based on the lack of viewership or listenership that has been experienced since the onset of other digital products. You might, though, consider the digital component or complement to television or radio with a streaming option like Pandora, Netflix, or Hulu, that sort of thing. Moving on, I do want to just say that you need to use ad messaging to qualify your prospects and your overcome objections. So what I mean to say by that is I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste the patient's time. Consider this. You may not accept a certain insurance. Indicate that. Make it really clear so you never receive that call in the first place because you don't want to waste time if you can't serve that patient. Indicate the diagnosis via imaging needed to qualify in some cases. There are many instances where a patient would need imaging before they could receive the procedure or service that you're offering. The way to combat that, if they haven't already had the imaging, would maybe be to ensure that you have a partner with a friendly imager that would ensure that you receive those leads back, right? After they've had them, you promptly have them returned to you. Also, direct prospects to online form fills and self-selection quizzes. These are excellent ways for people to self-identify whether they're actual candidates for a procedure. Make use of them. It'll cut down on the time you're on the phone. Also, promote virtual consults for transportation challenged patients. I would never advocate this generally, but there are so many instances, whether it's rural or elderly patients or just patients in certain areas, it's oftentimes a last resort that gets you the patient ultimately in the door because you allowed them to make that first initial consult much simpler. Also, use comparative techniques when appropriate. For instance, we're talking about minimally invasive IR procedures versus really aggressive surgical procedures. Classic example would be UFE versus hysterectomy. Make use of those comparatives and use the language strongly. It will have an impact. The other final thoughts I would just say to wrap things up would be, in order to maximize the campaign's effectiveness, you must integrate marketing across all mediums. Maintain a brand standard and make sure everything is very consistent. And if you've created content in one area, maximize that investment and place it in all areas that make sense. Also, I would avoid too generic of terms like, say, in PPC, back pain. Because if you are using a term like that, then you're competing with everyone, attorneys, chiropractors. It's just too expensive. So focus on those really narrower words that are going to benefit you in your practice and get to the heart of who you're looking for. Also, can't emphasize this enough. I know Jessica will appreciate this particular bullet point. Please test all the conversion methods from desktop and mobile devices. You have to make sure that all links are functioning. Please make sure your forms are going to the appropriate emails, the emails are functioning, and the people in those emails understand that they're responsible for following up. Also, phone numbers need to be accurate and direct in as many cases as possible. Also, I would say what I love about digital marketing specifically is it really allows you to optimize the mediums based on the ROI. And then you can reallocate the budget based on the most efficient methods. It's like I said, all advertising can work. It's what's working most efficiently and optimized for you that's going to yield the best ROI. So I want you to be just understand that that's so important, and it's why I tend to focus digitally. And then lastly, I would say be authentic. You create such a relationship with your patient, providing them with relevant information that maybe they can only get through you, that they can't see all over the internet. Make sure that your information is really proprietary and ultimately communicates to the patient what it is that differentiates you from everyone else. With that, I'll turn it over to Jessica so you can understand what to do with all those leads that this marketing will generate for you.
Well, thank you, Jen. Appreciate that, and appreciate that wonderful tee up here. So working with partners like Jen and Armada Marketing, when you think about all the work that goes into the strategy, the alignment, the how, the who, the where, then the next step is what happens after we get the click. And that's where, I wanted to bring some unique perspective today to help you all think about the way that we see, and we've been working with partners to help them maximize every click, right? So for just to start with, why we started CareSherpa is really this leakage dilemma. If you're on this call today, you have likely experienced this for yourself and you maybe not been able to quantify it. And I will tell you that yes, it is this bad. 81% of prospective patients that come into your practice never convert, never move forward. And when you think about all the time, effort, and money that you work with partners like Armada to generate this wonderful opportunity, to have 81% never move forward, it should give you heart palpitations. I know it does for me. And so ultimately the question is why? Why does this happen? Well, you joined the call today because you probably know, but I'm just going to reinvent and kind of restate it for you. What happens is that the majority of the time, what we find is twofold. One is that we do not activate on leads quick enough. An opportunity comes in, and not just hours, but in our studies, days go by. As a matter of fact, on average, most practices, and again, we cover things like cosmetic surgery, dental, orthopedic, interventional radiology, behavioral health. So this is universal within the healthcare organizations and industry. On average, most leads are not responded to within less than 72 hours. So 3 whole days go by before they get a call back. And we all know our lives are busy, right? 3 days later, you've moved on to the next crisis that you have to deal with. So we start there. But let's say that that patient picks up the phone and they call your practice directly and they're ready. They're ready to move forward. Well, what happens next? This should probably look familiar to many of you. I know it looks familiar to Andy, right? We had folks at the beginning that are the ones that we want to handle the call and help us book those procedures, book those consults. But the same person is oftentimes at the front desk and they have multiple demands. They got emails, they got, phone calls, they've got fax referrals coming in, they have a patient in front of them. So what happens is they have to triage and do what's, right in front of them. More often than not, your calls are going to the voicemail black hole, right? So you've got somebody on the phone ready to go and it goes to voicemail. Or if it does get answered, what happens is that because of the demands they have everywhere else, they are speed passing through the conversation. When we audit practices, I call it the cardinal sin, right? They'll say, I'm calling because I'm interested in, let's say in this example, the interventional radiology, I'm looking for treatment for uterine fibroids. Okay, what insurance do you have? Right? Not what's your name, thank you for calling, just what insurance do you have? We have an appointment next week. And then just move on to that transactional interaction. And so these events, these micro moments is what is killing your practice. The way that we like to frame it and what we see is that typically many practices have at least 10 per month where they don't respond to the lead at all. And then you double that when it comes to mishandling the lead conversation. So the way that we frame for our clients is that you have to consider every time the phone rings, that's a $3,000 transaction, plus or minus depending upon the value of your average patient. But if you put that in context, and for your call handlers, that gives them a grounding to think about, again, dollars associated to it. So $3,000 per phone call, that's bottom line impact to your business. And so when we think about this journey and the importance of that, getting that first call right, what we find is that it is that initial response. We get the lead. We try to respond immediately. As I mentioned, we drop the ball there. Typically it could be hours or days before we respond. But then today, our conversation that I'm excited for Andy to share you a little bit about his experience, this is the other side that most people don't pay attention to, which is what happens when I do actually engage with the patient and have that conversation. Unfortunately, we have treated the call handler role as a transactional scheduling function. This person is to collect minimal information, get the person on the calendar, and then make sure the next step in the process is handled. We argue that that is absolutely the wrong way to position this role. Again, if you put that $3,000 price tag on it, and if you quantify the impact an average call handler has in your practice, the one individual alone can have multiples of 100,000 plus what they could bring to your bottom line. But that context is also important because if your call handler is not conveying, we'll call these the four, tenets of success, providing clarity, we consider that qualifying, right? Qualifying the lead, building confidence. So making them feel that, hey, I called the right place. This place can truly treat my needs. Or if I'm selling kind of an elective medical procedure such as cosmetic surgery, this place is the only place that can definitely provide the goal that I want for my outcome. Compassion or empathy. Am I actually aligning to you as a person? Do I make you feel that I'm seen and heard? And then the other part too is the speed and efficiency. How quickly we're responding to them from that first impression is setting all the tone. So when we work with a partner on this journey, a big part for us is helping them think through what are those simple things that we can do today. And so if we go back to just to get to the basics, that first part is, are your call handlers handling every call as if it's a $3,000 plus value? Probably not, right? I don't know if any of you on the call today have called in to your practice as a mystery shopper. That tells you everything you need to know. And oh, by the way, if you've never done it, you can contact me. We'll be happy to do it for you for free because it gives you a true, genuine feel of what's your average consumer experience today. What's really happening when someone responds to Jennifer's, PPC ad or, your all your hard-fought marketing. What outcomes happen? And that's where you tell it the starting point of the opportunity. Next is arming your call handlers with that kind of mindset of who is this person and why did they call today? What finally motivated them to pick up the phone and have this kind, reach out and say, today is the day I'm going to activate. We spend the time to help you break down and think about, what's their mindset? What are they struggling with? Not just clinically, but emotionally. We find that when you align on that emotional level with your patients before they even show up to talk about the clinical, if you win in that moment, your likelihood of conversion goes up exponentially. Right? So I use the example, since we're talking about our friends with interventional radiology, there's a treatment for men with prostate related issues. And yes, they want relief from that, but like literally when you hone in on the fact of like, well, how many times do you have to get up in the night to go to the bathroom? How does your wife feel about that? Is she tired of you disturbing her sleep? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes, right? You just changed the entire conversation. I didn't talk to you about recovery. I didn't talk to you about price. I just told you, like, I see you, I hear you, I understand you. And it literally changes the dynamic that you have with the person. Or even asking that simple question of like, why today? And we jokingly use the example of the prostate because that truly happens. They say, my wife told me if I don't get this fixed, she's gonna, make me sleep in the other room, or whatever the case may be, or maybe worse, right? But then kind of the other simple fix that I would add that is critical to your success when you think about this call handling, not killing your practice, is this: one team member, at least one dedicated resource, has to be accountable for follow-up. There has to be a system and a process and a cadence that is consistent. Consistency is key when it comes. We just recently reviewed some patient conversion because we talk about speed to the lead, right? But the consistency also is continuing to follow up with the lead. We, as an example, follow up 6 to 9 times over a period of time when the lead first comes in. But then we also go back to the leads later when someone's life got busy. So if we follow up consistently, they know we're here, then even like 50, 60 days later, people will still activate and convert. So, it's kind of one of those like, until it's done, it's not done. So as I mentioned, happy to share with you more about what we do with folks, happy to do a mystery shop with you. I'll provide the information again at the end, but rather than continuing to hear from Jennifer and I, we thought it'd be valuable to hear from somebody who's actually been there, done that, got the t-shirt literally, and being able to support this. So Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Thanks for having me. This is something that I have identified as a huge area for growth, or not really growth, but just bringing you to a high level of converting these patients to getting the treatments that we want to do as interventional radiology providers, but also that we know will help them. Jen and I and the Armada team have worked together for months, and along the way we were identifying that the leads were coming, but they weren't showing up in clinic and they weren't converting to procedures. And that's all that we care about in IR, is we want to do the procedure. Quickly, I'm a PA in training, by training, but now I'm responsible, or was responsible for the practice management and now for the development and growth of our company. I work with Drs. Gozarian and Astani here in Minneapolis in a office-based lab. So we focus on outpatient interventional radiology procedures with our primary focus on embolization. So when we started, we just thought the idea was you pay money for marketing, you allow a certain type of your budget to pay for the marketing, and that's how you're going to get your patients while you build your practice and then get referrals to replace them. Okay, so pay money for Facebook leads. Jen takes it from there. All of a sudden, these names start coming to a spreadsheet, and okay, how do we get them to show up in clinic? You have your front desk person call them, and it's very transactional, like Jessica said. What time can you come? Come. And then they wouldn't come. Oh my gosh, 50% of these patients aren't showing up. What's going on? Are we ever going to do a procedure? You can't figure out why. Some do still show up, and you can convert them into procedures. We talk them about genicular artery embolization, and they get excited, and we still do some. But nice thing about having someone like Jen and Armada is they can kind of tell you, like, well, this from an industry standpoint, this might be a little bit less than we would want, and your ROI isn't as good as it could be. So they identified, like, maybe we should focus a little bit on this pipeline leak, and that's how we got connected to Jessica at Care Sherpa. And we had Jessica come here to Minneapolis in the middle of winter. So sorry, Jessica. And she met with our team, the callers, the people who are interacting with the patient leads. And it was an amazing experience. It changed everyone's mindset. And she really kind of just like talked us up about why we should be so proud to work here, and the treatments that we're offering these patients are super exciting. So we spent a day and a half just focusing on the features and the benefits of what we do in IR and how that can help the patients. And that's really where the focus of the conversation needs to be. It's way more emotional than it is medical. So before we used to think that you just needed to know how to describe a prostate artery embolization. No, now you need to be able to know how to figure out what Jessica just said it, right? Like, how does this affect your wife? Like, questions like that are what really are going to get the patient to connect with you and show up. And then the rest of the journey is improved by that, and I'll speak to that in a second. So just if you want the numbers here, genicular artery embolization, Jen gets you a ton of leads, and it's 11 clinic visits. It's 3%. That's not the greatest, but 21% no-show rate turns out to be 5 procedures. We track these numbers. We go over them with Jen, every month. And that's okay, but we want it to be better. We want to do more GAE. And so this was before we kind of took the Care Sherpa method. But we had, here's our training back in January, and it started with just 3 people attending, the people who are doing most of the interaction. And it quickly became like, this is a really important thing that everyone should be at. So as the patients, left the clinic, everyone came in, and it was a really impactful discussion. And it's important because everyone in your clinic is going to be interacting with the patient on that journey. And she said consistency is key. Well, while the first person who interacts with them has a large role, it does need to stay across the board. And I can speak to that here a little bit more in a minute. Okay, so just quickly, after we actually had less leads, double the clinic visits, double the procedures, and less no-shows. So how the heck did you do that? And it really has to do with this kind of come away from the medicine and focus more on the emotional connection. So that's something that we took from Care Sherpa, and we are still using on a daily basis. One of the main things is, why are they calling you? What are they really looking for? Like, try to figure out what about your clinic or your treatment is really matching with their values, their why. What about it? So this is a perfect example of how we use this now, and this is why this patient converted. So the first thing is the person on the call, you call this patient, you figure out they're really against surgery. Boom. The rest of the conversation with this patients need to be about why we're avoiding surgery. And that's it. Now, this patient gave us a bunch of other things like, hey, I want to feel better for my trip to Scotland. Great. This note gets entered in the patient's chart. Our other PA, Kayla, walks in and just leads with that. Hey, I hear we need to get you feeling better for this trip to Scotland. The patient feels so seen and heard. She's like, when can I do this? Okay, she's on the procedure schedule for a procedure, and she doesn't even know what a GAE is, but she feels that good because we're aligning with her values. And this is so powerful, and I've seen it many times, even just this week. I had a note like this that just said how to pronounce the patient's name correctly because the spelling was odd. And I just walked in and I just led with her name and she just looked at me, her jaw dropped. She goes, "Oh my gosh, Andy, it feels like you said my name like you've known me for years." Yeah, and I hear we're trying to get you to, to reduce your knee pain without surgery. And she signed up, same thing. I hadn't even talked about the procedure. She was on the schedule, and right as she's standing up to leave, and she goes, "What are you guys gonna do?" I was like, "Oh, you better sit down and let me talk to you about that." It is that powerful and that drastically different than what you would have expected when we came into this. I need to talk 20 minutes about all the research behind it and all the arteries we're going to go into and the size of the embolic particle and all that. No, it's really none of that. Oh, this was Jessica. She challenged us. She said, "Hey, give me a list of no-shows and I'll figure out why they didn't show up." And this was kind of startling. The one of the most common responses was, who was that? I don't remember that clinic at all. So that conversation was not memorable. It didn't connect with the patient. It was very transactional. They filled out something in the middle of the night on Facebook and they don't remember it, and they get a call from someone that isn't, leaving an impression, and so they don't show up to their appointment. They make the appointment to get someone off the phone, and that's it. The big one that I always hate is a scam. A lot of people think it's a scam, and that's Jessica commented on it. You really got to credential yourself, and this is where Jen helps so much too. Is get them to the website. You have to fight this. This is a real thing when you do direct to patient marketing, and you need to make sure even the caller, if the credibility from the ad and the website gets the caller to you, you got to back that up with. We see people like you all the time. Our doctors have been doing this for years. We've done hundreds and thousands of embolizations, all that kind of thing, to avoid that scam. So your phone call should be directed towards that. Talked out of it. Then they'll leave and their family will be like, "I've never heard of that before. That sounds like a hoax. That can't be real. It sounds too good to be true." And then they lose their confidence and they don't show up. So the kind of our system for doing phone calls now, at least the pre ones, are all dedicated to these three things. We need to make sure they know who we are and we know who they are. We're not a scam. We got to, credential ourselves as providers and as a clinic. And then we want to make sure that they have some info, or, "Hey, do you have any loved ones that would want to come with you to help you with this decision?" And then you bring them to the clinic visit and include them, and that can be super powerful as well. So things that I didn't expect from this. Word of mouth just takes off, right? So you have one word of mouth referral per month. It's now 4, it's now 6. And it's because that patient just feels like they were taken care of so well from that initial phone call to the clinic visit. "Oh my gosh, your person on the phone talked to the provider and you guys know about my trip to Scotland." That feels really good as a human. And now she's going to go tell her friends about how great Northstar is, and she's going to fill out a Google review. She's going to give a testimony. She's going to be like, "More people need to hear about you guys and what you're doing here." And Jen smiles when she hears these things because this is right up their alley. Oh, this is exactly what we need, to cement your legacy on Google, or we need these things. And these things just took off. Our Google reviews jumped significantly. We went from 4.6 to 4.8. We had 37 reviews. We're at 56 now. That's real success, in my opinion. And we haven't even been at this for 5 months, 4 months, really. Our confidence of our team, and Jessica kind of, we're doing real things here that can really help people, and constantly seeing the examples of how, as opposed to just your knee hurt, now it's better. What was your score? Now it's this. To be like, we helped you walk around Lake Como with your daughter, and that's something you've always wanted to do and you couldn't do. Those are real important things. Or you're now you don't wake up in the nights as much, so you're more rested, so you can be more present with your family, be exercise, whatever it would be. Those are the results. That's kind of what I didn't expect, is how everyone else on the team feels so filled and satisfied with what we're doing here. Those are benefits I didn't expect from this, and those are palpable in our practice.
Thank you, Andy. And I appreciate, I want to ask him, put you on the spot here for a minute. We didn't practice this. So, we talked a lot about the why of the patient, right? But now, have you scripted your call handlers? Do you have them adhere to a strict, you must say this at this time? Talk a little bit about how that's changed your conversation up front.
Oh yeah, I didn't even talk about this. So I talked at the beginning how it's the front desk people are managing it. Well, we identified this as such an important part of our practice and getting patients on the table that you need to protect time. We actually hired people who have sales backgrounds. These are people who know how to do this type of care Sherpa talk and be able to connect with people. and they're dedicated. And this is what they do. So that's the first part. And then yes, they came and it's not scripted. You got to be careful because I listen to some of our calls from Jen, and you can tell that our people are reading a script, and it's like, oh, that doesn't sound good. You can tell it's not genuine. So our script is basically like hit the key points, right? So like figuring out their why is going to drive the discussion. Like, ask some questions that help you get that stuff out of them. Like, what happened this week that led you call us or click on that ad? It's literally that easy, and they'll tell you. They will tell you right away, and then you can drive the rest of the discussion. So there's that, and then build confidence. Like again, the anti-scam, like credential the clinic, like and the providers, like say something along the lines of like, this is what we do. We're experts in embolization. We've done hundreds of something like you called the right place. But those little comments go a long, long way. The third, you have to credential them clinically. Like, so we still do that part of it. And then at the end, not at the beginning, I've heard phone calls where it's right away into insurance and finances. And that just is not, doesn't translate as well, I think, to conversion. I think that stuff that stays at the end because, and Jessica's the one who kind of gave me this confidence. People will pay out of pocket. People will pay out of network fees. People will drive across state lines to people that they feel comfortable with doing. And Jessica has her own story about that. And that's true. We've had people that come from different states because, either a word of mouth referral or they heard about what we do or they just like the way that our team made them feel. Like that is very powerful. So that we build their confidence. And then all of this has to drip with compassion and empathy. Like you can't, like it's got to be, that's the emotional side of it. Can't just be transactional. So that's our script, right? Those are make sure you hit those things during this phone call and we will have more success than not. And I showed you the numbers. It's obvious in terms of show rates, more clinic visits and more procedures.
And anyone that's listening, I'm happy to share kind of, we'll call it the big three. We have the big three ways that we recommend how to flow the conversation, as Andy mentioned. It's not a script, it's a call flow, but it's one that if your team understands the why do we ask the question this way? What are we looking for? What are we listening for? And then how do we plan to use that information? But I'm happy to share like our big three. Of course, there's lots of style points in between, as Andy and I have talked about. But one kind of narrative, Andy, I want to like have you share. I think the other thing that the first time you called me to say that the team sees it, they feel it, is when patients started showing up at your front and asking for, where's the call handler they talked to? Where's Mo? Because they felt like they had such a meaningful conversation. And then talk a little bit about how your team felt that sense of a relationship with that person as well.
Yeah, they're taking a huge leap of faith to just come to the clinic visit. And we just thought they would come because we came from a hospital and patients just came because they did. And now like they walk in the door and we'd be so excited because, Mo, he was our front desk person. He would call these and they would show up and he did spend 10 minutes on the phone with them, 15 minutes and they would look for him. And that was a huge trust builder, right? Like, oh man, I feel connected. That's the person I talked to on the phone. He's right here. He's part of the clinic. Look at this place. It's real. Like that would ease their tension and it helps with conversion. There's no question about that. Yeah, so that's a very fulfilling thing. So we have outsourced this before, but you lose this part of it, right? So it's like, oh, they're coming in here and like, where is this person? And our team doesn't even know who that person is. And like that doesn't feel good. So that's a hit against conversion. So we have the people who are doing these are in-house certain days of the week, and I have witnessed them go talk to these patients. Like they go, hey, I talked, I was the one who did your initial phone call or whatever, and they meet them, and it does just what Jessica said. It helps build, can build the trust and credential our clinic that these are the people that talk to you, and it really helps across the board. And that doesn't. That then translates from the next visit. So they check in and now the MA comes and the MA knows to ask them about Scotland. And like, now it just feels so good because that first call handler told the rooming staff, they told the front desk who checked me in, they told the rooming staff tells the provider knows. And like that patient just feels, so taken care of. They feel so seen. And they know they can trust that this is the place I want to make my knee feel better. This is the place I want to shrink my prostate, that type of thing.
And when you have those patients, like I know that, the Scotland example we shared earlier, they'll come back and share, like, because you're part of their journey, right? They'll share a picture of them in Scotland and like winning and like that, especially when you do your follow-ups.
Yeah. So real quick, UFE, we did UFE. She did great. She got pregnant 4 months after, and like everybody's crying in the office, like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Like we bought a onesie, it's mailed to her, like it's on her calendar. Like once the baby's due, yeah, see Jen. Like it just makes me so like emotional. Like that's the power of what we do, and it's on our calendar to be mailed. Like we have it here, and we're gonna send it to their address. Like that is going to speak volumes. Yeah, for sure.
And when you think about like your team, I love that you brought that up because we don't go into healthcare because we're just focused on dollars and cents, right? You're drawn to healthcare as a career because you want to help people. So doing this, making it personal, making it, human brings the person back to the experience in healthcare. And I love that you shared the increase in the word of mouth because that's exactly what happens when somebody has been struggling or, even like I know we talk about so with interventional radiology, but even like elective procedures, we work with fertility, we work with weight loss surgery, we work with cosmetic surgery. All these are triggered by a person who has like some pivotal moment that they're in pain, they're suffering, or they have hope of something. And so by aligning to them, both are you giving them the solution that they're seeking, but you're also giving your staff the opportunity to feel a greater sense of purpose, right? And so, yeah, and then that's why we're here. That's why, where your team is drawn to, they can go work anywhere. And I would argue, just as a sidebar, when you're changing your recruiting conversation, Andy, you probably talked about this too, because you recruited people since our conversation. This is how we do business. This is how we treat patients. That outside of compensation differentiates you as an employer as well. Would you say that that was a key for you, Andy, with your recent hire?
Absolutely, yeah. With all, and basically all of them since. You just go over the values of our company, and then part of the conversation comes up, but it does help. I mean, it's a huge part of recruiting. Yes.
And I know we also, and I think it's worth noting too for everyone that's listening, another big part of this is that you can put in people by hiring the right person. You can put in process by training them to the, script or the call flow. But then that last thing that you can't ignore is the technology. So how are you tracking? What's your single source of truth? So Andy, I know that you've put it into your EMR, so that way your entire team sees it. But you're also using other tools that your call handlers are doing to track like their touch points and their follow-ups, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was looking at the question that just came in about, I wanted
Yeah.
to go to Jen about this, and they're going to hate this answer because it depends on the service line. Like GAE is different than UFE. It depends on pay-per-click versus meta advertising. There's a lot that goes into it, but Jen could probably give you more industry averages. I am probably going to give too high numbers because my expectations might be a little bit too high for the conversion rate.
The
And we
question
really
was,
focus on
what do
the,
you
yeah.
what do you think is a good conversion rate from initial contact to the door? So Jen can talk about a good conversion rate from the ad, and I can share kind of what we see from industry of once you talk to a lead and what we call that the pull-through rate of people actually going through to the procedure. So Jen, can you talk through at a high level from conversion at the lead level?
Yeah, and Andy nailed it. It really does depend so much on the variables that go into any marketing program, but also reimbursement rate, payer mix, like all, cost. That I can't actually give you a number as it relates to that. What I will say is that from our perspective, we've seen upwards of a 6% conversion from lead to procedure. And I would say that I could consider that successful in the IR space, very successful. So
yeah, especially for meta advertising, but like pay-per-click is a lot higher because when they're that driven,
yes,
they're Googling it, they're calling you, they're going to be way higher at being from a lead to the clinic visit. They convert at a much higher rate.
That's an important distinction, actually. And you're right. I was speaking to Meta. I would say that it's entirely possible from a PPC campaign standpoint to see upwards of 25% conversion potentially. So again, so many variables, it would be a matter of drilling down. But if I were to put a number on it, I could say that might get you close.
So I can speak. So from CareSherpa's perspective, we are data geeks and data nerds, and we will be happy to nerd out with you on this topic a little bit more detail. We actually, one of the biggest fallacies I think is happening today in healthcare is that we're not thinking about it with all of the friction points or all of the gates. So we think about it from the entire patient journey. So Jen gets them there, they get them to your website, they get them, to respond and click the ad and maybe, call. That's wonderful. But then from there, not just from interest, but what are all those micro moments that are the gates that gets in front of someone before they convert? And so for us, we measure what we call pull through at each one of those, in addition to from the moment you're a lead to actual converted. Yes, there is a dependency on service line. Cosmetic surgery is completely different than bariatric surgery, et cetera, so forth. But I will say on average for my clients, when we look at this, the pull through rate, well, best stat I'll tell you from consult, meaning that first time they come in to having the treatment, my best practice clients are 90% conversion because they've done everything up front, right? They've like qualified, they built the relationship, they are, there to the nth degree, 90%. That's my best practice. My average is about 70%. So that's where I try to get my clients in that 70% from consult to, the actual procedure. But if you go up from the lead to procedure, the full pull-through rate, if you're above a 35%, then you're doing things well. And so again, you're going to lose people because they're not clinically qualified. You're going to lose people because they're not financially qualified. But that's where we typically see people to start. As we work with partners like Armada and partners like Andy, when we're tuning, my best practice clients, that pull through rate, we're in the 60s on up. So again, there's lots of levers that pull. And as Andy mentioned, I love that he shared that, like if you're doing this well, your number of leads can go down because now you're targeting people more precisely. You are changing, we're listening to ultimately what are we hearing during the calls. I know Andy's team now is more tuned in that when somebody shares information that they've heard or a question they ask, that gets fed back up to content, so that we're making, better SEO, and we're making, hey, that's a great video that our team can be talking about, our providers can be talking about. So to me, I think holistically looking at it as a pipeline is really the right answer. Andy, a question also came in around the question of the pushback from your team. Like, was there much pushback in terms of, and I'd love to have you share kind of what they were worried about before I showed up, and then kind of the response after, what happens when you actually started to implement the process.
Yes, there's pushback because I think they were worried it's going to be salesy, right? They're going to feel like this is like we're trying to push these procedures on people that don't want them. And you addressed that right off the bat, but that was that was quickly moved into like, remember, like, this is why we're here. We're trying to help people, and they're coming to us, and we do offer a treatment and believe in those treatments and see the benefit of how you can help people. That quickly went away. So it did become adopted because I think they noticed with your direction that it's not salesy as that word can make people think of. Like someone shows up that makes you feel like, I don't know, not great, and you're just trying to get them to go away, and like you don't want to do their purchase their services or partner with them. So there was definitely resistance, but it was quick. I think the fact that you came and we had that dedicated time really helped to accelerate that. And now people care about more about the Google reviews than I do in house, which is like amazing. Like, okay, great. Like we have our MA. She's like, I told her she's the director of Google reviews. Like she pulls it up every single day. She's the first one to know if we get a new one, which is, our marketing guy should be that one person, but she's that invested in it because, and that must be a source of fulfillment for her. So yes, it's been adopted well, and a lot of team members I've seen, the front desk put the notes in. I've seen the providers put the notes in. So we overcame that with your help. But there was resistance.
And I think that that's natural. And I know, like, one of the things that you and I talked about recently is, like, you got to lay this foundation and you put that baby steps into it, right? Changing the process, helping people know the why. And then now you're having the conversation of, like, now the team's so jazzed up. How do we think about a future state where incentives or other things are tied to performance? So, that's the natural progression. I think too often than not, people just throw it at the team, be like, okay, here's your new call flow, here's your new script, here's your new requirement, and then not set them up for success. So I want to, double click and go back to the fact that you did start with, like, you recognized, okay, we have to first carve this role out and hold it sacred and have the call handlers be set up for success, give them the tools, give them the technology, the training, and then now it's a snowball, right, of the growth that you're doing. Fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. So want to just share with everyone, again, happy to share with you our big three. Also, as I mentioned, the opportunity to do a mystery shop for you and give you an outside bias. And I know Jen and Armada also would be happy to talk to you about, are you optimized digitally before you start thinking about, making the phone ring? But we really appreciate you all joining us today. And Andy, thanks so much for sharing your story of kind of the ongoing work that you're doing to improve your outcomes.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone.